Welcome to Eternal Journey, the podcast.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome back for another episode of Eternal Journey, the limited podcast. I'm your host, Jedi, and we will be continuing our set review of Defiance, covering the rares today. All right, but first things first, I want to go ahead and mention our Patreon, patreon.com/EJthePodcast. This is where you can kind of help support the show. If you're enjoying it, getting some good content out of it, getting something out of the show, helping your game, you can contribute as little as $1 a show, and it makes a big difference for me, so I really appreciate that. And that's about it. So let's go into our Pack 1, Pick 1 real quick. Cover that. I'm not going to spend too much time on it because the set reviews tend to run a little long, and we want to make sure we get through everything in a timely fashion. So open up our crack a pack of Defiance here. Starting with the commons, we have Master Cartographer. It is a 2/1 Elf Explorer for 2 and a Primal. Summon, draw a card, then discard a card. I like this card. I think it's solid. 2/1 for 2 isn't great, but it's not horrible. It is kind of par for course in some regards. But the fact that you're able to loot or draw a card and then discard a card helps you make sure you hit your sigil or power drops early in the early game, and it's good late game because you can discard those extra power cards to potentially draw you into some gas. Next is Grandfather's Axe. It is a +1/+1 weapon for 3 and a fire. When the wielder dies, draw Grandfather's Axe from your void. So +1/+1 isn't that great, but the fact that it is repeatable, as each unit dies, you get it back, really helps you enable multiple renown triggers from that one. So it's not horrible. I like having at least one in my deck. I don't think I've ever really had two, maybe, but that's probably about the max I would want because once again, +1/+1, unless you really have those renown triggers, doesn't really kind of give you enough of a payoff. Next up is Improvised Club. It is a +6/+6 relic weapon for 8 and a shadow. This card is fine. I like having one in my deck. That being said, though, it is an 8-drop, so I am definitely not taking this anytime early. So we'll move on. Next, we have Lazy Fireman. Fire Main. It is a 3/3 elemental cat for 3 and a fire. Renown, play a 1/1 wildcat with charge. It's fine. Filler, 3/3 for 3 is just fine. The renown trigger is okay. It's not really giving a huge payoff. Next, we have Rumbling Contraption. It is a 6/4 engine for 7. Has Overwhelm, and when you summon it, it is exhausted. I don't think I've ever played this card so far, so not really doing it right now. I think my high pick would probably be the Cartographer. Like Primal in this set, and it just is good late game and good early game. So yeah. Next up, we have Oni Forge Master, which is a 2/2 for 2 and a fire. It is an Oni, and it has Renown, create and draw a +2/+1 weapon. I actually think this is going to be the new front runner. Reason being is I like the fact that you trigger Renown on itself, it becomes bigger or better, and you also get another effect out of it. So you get an extra card that works good with Market or as well, which you can sometimes have access to Unlimited, and you also get to trigger a Renown trigger on a later drop. So I like it. Oni Samurai is a 1/2 Oni for, or Oni, sorry, 1 power and a Justice, and it has Warcry. I've literally never played this card. I think some people are higher on it, but I've never played it. Just a 1/2 for 1. Yeah, if you kind of get it down on turn 1, you can get some attacks with it, or if you put a solid weapon on it, but I'm not the biggest fan of cards that they're only good when you have some kind of attachment to it. So, next, our final common is Curator's Spear. It is a +2/+1 relic weapon for 2 and a shadow, and summon it. If you have another relic, it gets a +1 attack. I think it's okay. I'll play one of them in my deck because it is a kill spell. You use it, you kill a small flyer or something like that, and you move on with your day. So not bad. Yeah, but that being said, these don't go very highly because not too many people want them, so I think I'd probably still stick with a Forge Master. Moving on to our uncommons, we have Mug. It is a spell, 3 power and a shadow. The enemy player discards a non-power card choice from your hand. this card's fine. I mean, the fact that you get to pick, and it's any card minus power, I think is solid. But yeah, it's a good card. I wouldn't take it this early though. Next up, we have Temple Artisan. It is a 2/2 elf mystic for 4 and a time. It has Pledge, so if you have it in your opening hand, you can play it as a time sigil. And Empower double Temple Artisan's health and attack this turn. I haven't been too impressed with this card. I actually haven't really played it because just baseline 2/2 for 4, and then best case or mid range you play a sigil, it becomes a 4/4. Isn't that great? Granted, I do acknowledge if you're in Praxis or Combre and you have an ability to throw, a weapon on it, now all of a sudden it's getting a lot bigger, but I'm not really high on it. Next up, we have Lethrai Hideaway. It is a relic, 2 power, 1 primal, 1 shadow, and it says once per turn you may pay 4 power to give one of your elves +2 attack permanently. Summon, play a 2/1 dark elf. So bottom line is baseline it is a 2/1 dark elf for 2, which is okay. It's fine. I actually like this card because it counts as a relic in colors that relic matters, or factions that care about relics. If you have a couple of elf synergies, I would say maybe 5 elves in your deck, you have the potential of just kind of building these guys up. Mind you, it's permanently, so you can do it every turn. You can give one of your elves and just make it like even the elf it comes into play with could be an 8/1, and then it starts trading up, or especially if you can give it unblockable and things like that. So yeah, I kind of like Lethrai Hideaway. It is two factions, but the payoff is kind of there where it might be worth it. And it is somewhat easily splashable because it's only 1 primal of each. Next up, and our rare finally, is Blistering Claws. It is a +1/+4 relic weapon for 6 time Shadow. And you have Deadly while you have a unit with Deadly. Yeah, I don't like it. You have to have the prerequisite of having a unit with Deadly on it, on the battlefield, which, don't get me wrong, there are 1/1 death or deadly units in Praxis or Xenon, but I mean, once again, it boils down to having another card on the board. Most of the time, even when you do give this deadly, even with the 4 health or armor, it's only going to kill 1 unit because the stuff you want to kill with the deadly is going to be that big. So yeah, I'm not too excited about taking this card early. That being said, I do think Lethrai Hideaway will be the pick for me. It just has the highest ceiling out of all the cards in this pack. So, yep. All right, cool. And then that's it for pack 1, pick 1. Let's get right into our main topic for this week, which is the rare Defiance set review. So, as usual, we'll go down order that I have on Eternal Warcry, and we will start with Fire. Opening up, we have Notorious Scoundrel. It is a 2/1 Gunslinger Rogue for 2 and a red. So, once again, baseline like we saw earlier in the pack. Renown, play a +4/+2 weapon on the Notorious Scoundrel, and the enemy player plays a wanted poster on him. So, wanted poster means when this unit dies, the opponent draws 2 cards, because i.e. this guy was wanted, they caught him, so they get the reward. So let's say you have the axe, Grandpa's axe, you place it on him, he's a 3/2, then the renown trigger hits, so he is a 7/4. So potentially 7/4 on turn 3 is pretty legit. That being said, though, whenever your opponent does get around to killing him, they get 2 cards back and you're down 2 cards. So it is quite a bit of a trade-off. I think this is more of a constructed card. So it's a fine body. It's fine. You'll play it. Don't get me wrong. But that being said, I don't know how incentivized you are to essentially put the wanted poster on, because sometimes the 2 cards can make a big difference. So I gave Notorious Scoundrel a 3 out of 5. All right. Next up, we have Flametail Whip. This is a +1/+1 weapon for 3 red or 3 fire. It has charge, so i.e. the unit you place it on will have charge, and summon, play 3 1/1 Wildcats with charge. Sacrifice them at the end of the turn. Yeah, I feel like this paying 3 power in a card to give another unit charge is, I don't think that great, because I mean you're paying 3 more, so a 5 power unit is now going to be 8. To essentially get a +1/+1 charge. Yeah, sometimes the additional cats will come into play, but the fact that you have to sacrifice them at the end of the turn makes them not that important. So you really want to be getting paid off by the units coming into play, something that triggers when you play a unit. Then you're really kind of getting your money's worth off of it, because you're potentially getting, you know, 3 cards off of one, much like the Grenadin synergies. So yeah, I put Flame Tail Whip at a 2, because unless you really have that major like enter the battlefield effects payoffs, it's not really worth it for me. Yeah, moving along, we have Shiftstone Processor. This is a relic for 3 and a fire. When a unit goes to your void, you get +1 power this turn. Yeah, this is constructed card. There's no way you can really adjust your deck, I feel like, in limited to capitalize on this effect. So yeah, I'm gonna give Shiftstone Processor a 1, moving right along. Shigane Firebrand is a 4/3 Oni warrior, 4 fire. It has Pledge and Renown. Deal damage to an enemy equal to the cost of that spell or weapon. Yeah, the 4/3 for 4 is fine. I think it's solid. It does require double fire, which makes it just a little bit harder to splash, but I think it's going to be in the deck that you want to go fairly easily. Pledge gives you a little bit of insurance. 4 drops with Pledge are a little interesting to me, because I feel like they're within the development part of the game where you might not want to pledge them unless you absolutely have to. But once again, it does give you the ability to keep a hand that you may not want to keep, because you have that extra sigil, access to an extra sigil that way. So I think it's fine. And I mean, in reality, how much power are you spending on Renown on this guy? 2, maybe 3. That being said, it does kill something. I don't think you're going to be absolutely amazed like you got there, like, yeah, we totally did it. But it does give you slight upside. So, the potential for a 2-for-1. So I gave Shigane Firebrand a 3. I think it has some upside, but not enough to be like put it up in the 4 category where you really actively want to be moving these colors and stuff. All right. Next up, we have Siege Breaker. This is a 6/5 elemental for 4 fire. So you're getting a major upside here on stats. You're getting 6/5 stats for 4. That's huge. I mean, that's close to what we just talked about with the Scoundrel, but you had to display equipment on it, trigger renown. This thing, you're just getting it right off the bat. It has Overwhelm, which is great when you have a high attack rate, which 6 is great. It'll trample over a bunch of units. It has Summon, kill an enemy relic. So this is why rares are so good. So now we're getting plus on undercosted stats. We are getting Overwhelm, which is great on a big creature or unit, and you're getting a somewhat relevant summon ability. If you do play it on turn 4, you may or may not have a target for it, but it's not bad. And then Entomb, the enemy player draws a relic of their choice from their deck. So there is the downside to this, right? There's the kind of downside is the fact that if it does end up dying, they get a card of their choice. That being said, I think it's safe to acknowledge the fact that not every deck is going to be playing relics, and when they do, they might only have one. So you're not giving them this thing where they get to essentially tutor for the best card in their deck or anything like that. I think, and there could be a good chance that you destroy the one relic they had, and then that's it. When this unit dies, they don't have another one. So I actually like Siegebreaker quite a bit. You have a couple of combat tricks if you're in Rakano or Skycrag. You have a couple of combat tricks to keep this guy alive through combat. You're still getting in damage every turn. Your opponent, it's a must-answer threat. So yeah, I think Siegebreaker gets a 4 for me. I don't think it's going to win you the game on the spot if you draw a little too late, but the fact that it is just a powerhouse in the beginning of the game and even mid-game, I think Siegebreaker is great. So I gave it a 4. Next up, we have Ashen Snake Pit. This is a relic for 5 and a fire. When you play your first spell in a turn, play a 3/1 Flame Fang with Reckless Exhausted. See, here's the thing. The similar one that we saw at the uncommon level, I believe, with where you get a 2/1 axe every time you play a unit. See, that seems more viable to me because of the fact that you're going to have a bunch of units in your deck versus you're not going to have that many spells. Next up is also the fact that you're getting a 2/1 equipment that or weapon that will stay on the board, help another creature, and trigger Renown. Versus the 3/1 Flame Fang Reckless, they're fine. Don't get me wrong; they do put some pressure on your opponent, but they're just not that big of a payoff. It's too easy for your opponent to chump block them or to have a solid blocker they can't do, and they have Reckless, so it's not like you can leave them back on defense and kind of build a solid board. That being said, and you're talking about what, somewhere between 5 to 9 spells in your deck. Maybe that's a little on the high side. Yeah, I'm kind of off of it. I don't really see a spells matter deck yet. So Ashen Snake Pit gets a 2 from me. Next up, we have Phoenix Hammer. This is a +4/+2 relic weapon. All right, for 6 and a fire. So, I think we could do better than that. So not great in the front. It does have Amplify 2 +1 attack. So if you do it for 8, it's a 5/2. If you do it for 10, it is a 6/2 relic weapon, which means you're still maybe only going to get one good hit. It's a good way to finish your opponent if they have a clear board. But let's be honest, how often does that happen in Limited? It has some more text. When you play your 3rd spell in a turn, draw a Phoenix Hammer from your void. Yeah. So once again, another spells matter kind of payoff thing. In a perfect world, you use this, you kill 1 unit, maybe 2. It gets destroyed. Then you play the next turn 3 different unit or 3 spells, and you get it back. And you get to do it all over again. Of note, it does say draw, not play. So you have to play 3 spells in a turn, which is essentially going to take up your whole turn. And then next turn, you'll still have to replay Phoenix Hammer. So yeah, not a fan of it. Some people will play it, but typically I don't think you're going to use that, get it back from your Void synergy. So I gave Phoenix Hammer a 2. All right, and our last card for red is going to be part of a cycle. Each faction got their own lord, so to speak, if we could use MTG terminology. So we have Shingane Captain. It's a 5/5 Oni soldier for 6 fire. It has charge, and your other fire units have a +1/+1. So the cycle they're all 5/5s for 6 power, and they give a +1/+1 to the respective factions, and they each have a keyword. This one has charge. I think that Shingane Captain is actually really good. I like all of them just because the Anthem effect on a body is great. You're kind of getting 2 cards in one. They're all large. The fact that it's a 5/5 with charge really creates the ability to have a really good alpha strike, i.e. you'll see that you have potentially all your units, you have a stalled board state. You guys think that they're unfavorable blocks and things like that, and then all of a sudden you add 5 power onto the board, at least in just one body, and then it bleeds over to potentially, +4, +5 power on the rest of the board across units, and then charge. So you can swing in there. You have 1 combat trick. You make a world of difference now. Yeah, so I think it's pretty solid. That being said, I gave Shingane Captain a 4, which I believe is what I gave across the board for all these lords. Moving into time now, we have Crested Runt. This is a 1/1 dinosaur for 1 at a time. It has charge, and then it has Amplify 5, play as a 6/5 dinosaur. So here's the thing, like a 1/1 for 1 even with charge is just not that impressive. I think every time you play this, it's going to be for 6, and a 6/5 with charge is not bad. I would like it to have Overwhelm, but like we talked about before, this being a large creature or a large unit with charge definitely can impact and surprise your opponent, especially if they're not ready for it. So I think it could do quite a bit of work. So with that, I think you're always going to play it for 6. So I gave Crested Runt a 3 just because, 6 drops are pretty interchangeable. And this one isn't particularly amazing. So yeah. Moving on, we have Bizarre Trickster. This is a 2/3 mage for 2 at a time. Pay 4 to silence an enemy unit. I think this card is great. It's a repeatable silencing effect. It being a unit does make it the most vulnerable of permanents to essentially take out, but the fact that you can just sit there and any utility units that your opponent has take out, any flyers they have or unblockables, you can take out over and over again for 4. And if your opponent doesn't have any units to do that to, you do have a 2/3 body for 2, which is solid. It's just great. I think this card is fantastic. It can really take over a game unlimited, especially if you wait a little bit to play it to where your opponent doesn't run out of removal for it. You just don't attack and you sit there and silence everything. It's huge. I think it's a great card. So the only reason why I was hesitant to give it a 5 is because of the fact that it doesn't win you the game. It's still just a 2/3 body. It definitely stops you from dying and could help you win indirectly by taking out a pesky deadly creature or some unit or something like that. But that being said, it's still extremely powerful. So I gave Bizarre Trickster a 4. All right, definitely wants to make you either splash it in time or go time. Next up, we have Vapor Hut. This is a relic for 2 at a time. Once per turn, you may pay 5 to play the top power card of your deck depleted. So it can clean up your draws late game by getting those pesky unwanted sigils out of the way. It does play them, so it is a pseudo ramp, but that being said, it being 5 means that you're not really ramping all that hard past that. It does trigger some empower triggers and things like that. That being said, it's still at slow speed, so your opponent can see it coming. I don't think Vapor Hut is that amazing. It just doesn't do enough, even with the potential relic synergies. So I gave Vapor Hut a 2. Next up, we have Antique Polisher. This is a 4/2 for 3, 4/2 Explorer. It is for 3 at a time. It has Endurance and has a summon ability, reduce the cost of a relic in your hand by 2. I really haven't come across relics that I feel are that huge and amazing where you want to draw, like you're going to get a huge advantage by making them cheaper, other than potentially having your 2 spells in one turn come in sooner, which is a certain level of tempo advantage. The 4/2 is fine. It's nothing exciting. It's a fine body for 3. I'm okay with that. Endurance is a little weird just because of the fact that, like, most of the time if you are attacking with this thing, they're just going to take it out. It be having 2 health doesn't mean it's going to be very powerful. Many of the things will trade up for it. So the endurance is a little weird, but I think it's okay. So I gave it a 3. It's just a curve filler. Next up, we have Unraveling Fanatic. This card is awesome. So it is a 1/1 cultist for 3 at a time. So right there, we're highly overcosted. But let's see what the text box says. At the start of your turn, each player draws an additional card. So it is symmetrical. So you get an extra card, your opponent gets an extra card, but you did spend a card to do that. After 3 turns, transform Unraveling Fanatic into Sanity's Anathema. All right, so you both are going to draw 3 additional cards, so 6 cards total. Then if this guy is still alive, he is going to transform into a Nightmare that is XX and Overwhelm. And its power and toughness, or health and attack, is based on the number of cards in both players' hands. So you both just drew 6 cards total. So this card at the minimum is going to be a 6/6. I've seen this card be a 14/14, depending on the board state and stuff like that. I think this card is absolutely fantastic. If you play it early, chances of your opponent having an answer for it are kind of slim. A 1/1 is very vulnerable, but if you manage to have this thing stick around, it is just absolutely backbreaking, because it'll come out, like I said, it creates a 14/14, which is, unless your opponent has straight up some level, kind of even at an 8/8 Overwhelm, if your opponent does not have some type of way to get it off the board, then you just straight up win the game. It really does. So I gave Unraveling Fanatic a 5. You actively want to be you want to play this card. You really do, because the ceiling is, the ground floor is, it is at the start of your turn. So you could play it, have your opponent immediately kill it, and no one gets any cards. And once again, it is symmetrical, so they have a higher chance of drawing an answer for it. So there is some downside, but the ability to just steal a game is just absolutely amazing. So yeah, I gave Unraveling Fanatic a 5. There is potential in a stalled board state. You guys are both off of 2 cards, and then the Overwhelm or the Anathema isn't that great, but I mean, once again, I'm valuing the fact that this thing can just run away with the game if left unanswered. And the fact that it draws you 3 cards is relevant as well, even if it does die. So, yep. Moving on, we have Etched Monolith. This is a relic, 5 power, double time. Your units have charge. Not very exciting. Pay 10 and sacrifice Etched Monolith to have your life become 25. Yeah, I played it one time. I had it in my seal pool. I gave it a shot, and I was not impressed. The fact that you have to play 5 power to give your units charge just isn't much of a payoff. Like, you're going to have, maybe 2, 3 units that you can play after that you can play and attack, because there's going to be cards on the board, units filling up the board, and things like that. So you can't just play a 2-2 and swing. You know what I mean? So that's going to be an issue. Maybe if you have flyers, it could be a thing. And the gain life part is irrelevant if you're in a race, and that's about it. But then again, how much of a race are you in if you potentially have to spend 5 of your power to just do this ability? You pay 5 to have the relic, and then later on you have to pay 10, which, yeah, it's just getting to 10 in a situation where life gain would be a matter. It's just not that great. So yeah, I gave Etched Monolith a 1. I just don't think it's that spectacular. I think you're not going to see the payoff matter as much. And then, yeah, it just is. I'm off it. I'll move on. You guys can let me know in the comments if you think I'm wrong. But like I said, I just don't. When my opponents have played this, I've been excited. I'm like, sweet, you guys just spent a whole card and a whole turn to do this, and I'm still going to run you over. So, and if they gain the 25 life, the one time they actually did gain the 25 life, I was still able to power through it without an issue. It took a couple more turns, but I crushed them. So, next up, we have Moonstone Vanguard, and this thing just feels like a sight on its own. It just does everything. It is a 5/5 Sentinel for 5, double time. It has Endurance and Pledge, which honestly, I've never pledged this thing. It's just too good. I don't want to sacrifice it like that. When Moonstone Vanguard attacks, draw a card. Awesome. Sweet. And it gets Endurance, so it can still block. And when it blocks, you gain 5 health. Like I said, this card just does it all. It's fantastic. It stabilizes your board. It has the potential of gaining you life if you're blocking. Your opponent's going to be less incentivized to attack into it. Or, the fact that it has endurance means you can attack, save a combat trick so you can draw a card, and then it stays back to defend. 5/5 body for 5 is a great rate on stats. It's just awesome. I think Moonstone Vanguard is absolutely amazing. So I gave it a 5 as well. It's just good in all points of the game. It's good on your curve. It's good late game. It's good everywhere. I think it's fantastic. If you give it flying, this thing's just a boss or unblockable. Jeez. So yeah, Moonstone Vanguard is awesome. Gave it a 5. All right, and our last card for time is going to be Temple Captain. Once again, part of that cycle is 5/5 for 6, double time. It has Overwhelm. And then all your units get a +1/+1, all your time units, which honestly is a little slightly weird because typically time has the bigger units, but at the same time, sometimes just giving them that extra +1/+1 makes your board that much more formidable and you can swing in. The Overwhelm is great. It's a big body, so you want it to have something to kind of get in there. And once again, now granted, I will say that you are slightly less inclined to attack with this thing. Even with the Overwhelm, because of the fact that you don't want to lose the Anthem effect for all your other units, but the fact that it's a big creature with Overwhelm or unit is always great. So yeah, that's time. Time looks pretty solid. It has some downers, but it has some very powerful cards, so I'm excited for that. Moving right along, our next faction is going to be Justice. And first on the chopping block, we have Adjudicator's Gavel. This is a cursed relic, so it goes on your opponent for 1 and a Justice, and cards can't leave cursed players void. Yeah, this card does straight up nothing in Limited. It's very much a constructed card to kind of shut down things like Haunted Scream or some kind of graveyard or void shenanigans, so I gave it a 1. Next up, we have Golem Press. All right, this thing is a relic, 2 and a Justice. If you have no steel golems, you may pay 2 to play a 1/1 steel golem with double damage. This card's great. I like it because it is a repeatable source of units. This really kind of capitalizes on enter the battlefield synergies. You know, things like bear arms is great. You have bear arms on a unit. You just keep swinging in there and you keep chump blocking with your golems, or you keep attacking them, letting them block, and you just keep playing more and more. It gives you a power sink somewhat any point in the game. If you don't have your golem, you can pay 2 to make another one. Like I said, it gives you a constant source of blockers if there's a pesky, not overwhelmed unit that your opponent keeps attacking with. I think it has some solid synergies, and the fact that it has double damage is great because it synergizes well. It just has a lot of weapons. You can put a solid weapon on the golem, and if you lose it, hey, such is life, you make another golem. All right, so I like it. I gave Golem Press a 4. I think it's a very versatile card. It does have some relic synergies, so I think it's great. Don't think it's potentially going to win you the game, but I think it's great. It has enough diversity that it kind of it's higher above average. Next up, we have Hojan Crown Breaker. This card is seeing some serious constructive play. Let's see if it's all right for limited. It is a 2/1 Paladin for 2 and a Justice. It has Empower, +2/+2, and Lifesteal. So you play a Sigil or Power card, and it becomes a 4/3 Lifesteal. Not bad, not bad, especially if you get it down on turn 2. It'll probably get in there for about 8 damage, gain you 8 life. It also has Renown. Play as Justice Sigil from your deck depleted. So of note, it does trigger Empower on itself, so you can get 2 Empower triggers in one turn if you're able to kick off Renown on it. As well, so if you make it a flyer or something like that, and it ramps you a little bit. So this card is not bad, not bad. Baseline of it is a 2/1 body though. So I gave it a 3. I think it's a fine card. It's not incredible, but it is a fine card. You are happy to play it if you're in those colors. Next up, we have Avagraft. This is, once again, seeing some constructive play on limited. All right. Well, it is a cursed relic, so it goes on your opponent once again. 3 power, Justice. It has summon, kill a enemy unit without flying. That's it. Just straight up. If it doesn't have flying, you can kill it. Doesn't matter what size it is, what it does, nothing like that. That's great. That's borderline unconditional removal. Granted, I will admit, at least a quarter of the time, the unit that you really want to kill from your opponent is going to be a flyer, but I mean, hey, it's kills everything else without question. Of note, it is a cursed relic, so you want to make sure your opponent or the unit you're going to target does not have Aegis, because it could cancel it out on both or in either phase. And it has some additional text. The cursed player can't play units with the name with that name while you have Avagraft. That's not necessarily going to come into play too often in limited. Most of the time, the bombs and the really important cards people are going to have, they're only going to have one of. But occasionally, if you have just something pesky that's getting in the way, you can play it. And I mean, it happened to me. They Avagrafted me with one of my 2/5, the Golden Flyer, Soroco or something like that. Forgive me. And I ended up having one in my hand and one of them in my deck. So that did make a pretty big deal. But in limited, like I said, that text is a little bit less relevant. And last, there's Entomb. They play a 3/3 Valkyrie. So if they happen to find a way to destroy it, which I think really is only going to necessarily happen if they're running time, just because this function has some versatility. I don't think Fire is really going to run their Destroy Enchantment. They get a 3/3. So I like this card. I think it's pretty solid. I think it's really solid removal. The fact that it hits the majority of things. Now, once again, I am giving some credit that it won't hit flyers, and if they do have a way to destroy it, they're getting a unit back, potentially an upgrade. Hopefully not. So I gave Avagraft a 4 instead of a 5, but it is really good. I like the fact that it kills just about anything when you need it to. All right, moving right along, we have Kosul Elite. This is a 3/2 Minotaur for 3 double justice, and your weapons that can be played on units are fast. So baseline 3/2 for 2 is fine. You're not excited about it, but it is a comparable body. You're not pissed off that you have to play it. That being said, the only real upside to it is that it makes a few of your weapons combat tricks and permanent combat tricks. I mean, they still stay on the unit. So if you have the +2/+2 or the +2/+3, something like that, you can do them at fast speed, which is relevant. Like I said, it does additionally give you more combat tricks, which means they could be removal. So there is some upside to it, but once again, not enough upside to really make me feel like this card is amazing. So I gave Kosul Elite a 3. Next up, we have Imperial Loyalist. It is a 4/3 warrior for 4 and a justice. Comparable body, it's fine. You'll play it. It has Pledge, so you can get a green sigil out of it your first turn if need be. And Renown, play another unit of your choice from your deck with cost equal to or less than the spell or weapon. Yeah, I just gave this guy a 3 because here's the thing: like most of the weapons and combat tricks you're gonna play on are 2 or 3, right? At best, the ones aren't gonna make a difference because you really, unless it's an awesome kind of deadly unit or something like that, you're not gonna have any 1-drops. And I mean, you might have like you're talking about having another kind of weapon that costs 5 or 6 to really kind of get your value worth out of this. So it has some upside. Don't get me wrong. Like if you play somehow you get an awesome, maybe legendary Roland's Fist or something like that, and then you play it on this, and then you get to play a free 6-drop. That's huge. Like now you're really just getting there. But once again, that's best case scenario mentality, and I really don't like to focus on that. Most of the time, you're gonna play something that's 2, 3, or 4 on this guy, and then a 4 you're still getting a decent payoff. 2 and 3 with combat tricks is what I'm really focusing on. I think it's the majority of time, and it's just not big enough of a payoff. It is still a 2-for-1. You still are getting a free card, so it is relevant. So I gave it a 3. Next up, we have Crown Watch Captain, which is the other captain for this cycle for Justice. It is a 5/5 soldier for 6 double Justice. It gives all your Justice units a +1/+1, which is great because Justice has plenty of flyers, but it also has Aegis. I really like this. I like this because the fact that it protects itself. It's automatically going to be a 2-for-1. You worst case scenario, you just don't swing with it, and if you do, I mean, it's a 5/5. It's not the easiest thing to kill. So yeah, I gave Crown Watch Captain a 4. Next up, we have Defender's Bulwark. It is a +0/+0 weapon. Weird. 6 power, double Justice, and it has a summon ability. Defender's Bulwark gets +1/+1 for each damage you were dealt last turn. Yeah, I just gave it a 1. The fact that for this to be anything relevant, because of the fact that it's 6 power, you have to take a ton of damage to your face. Yeah, I don't like that. I mean, obviously, if you get to put it on a lifesteal unit, then you kind of have the potential of getting that life back. Or, I don't know, in a race maybe. But once again, it's 6 power, so how often are you going to play it? Yeah, I just don't like Defender's Bulwark. I'm not going to spend too much time on it. I gave it a 1. So that's Justice. Not too bad, not too bad. Nothing that really stood out to me, but it's got some cards, some fun cards to draft and play with, so we'll see how it goes. Next up, we have Primal. Opening up Primal, we have Savagery. It is a spell for 1 power, but triple Primal. Excuse me, so you're definitely not splashing this card. And it gives one of your units Killer and Overwhelm. So I like this card. It's not crazy. Don't get me wrong. I am not super high on it. In fact, I gave it a 3, only because of the fact that it is a 1 power pseudo removal spell. You're putting it typically on a larger creature, so the Overwhelm is relevant. I don't think it's rare status. And once again, I gave it 3 because this is kind of like the typical removal spell that you're going to see for Elysian. So it's fine. Like I said, you're going to give a beefy creature killer, take out one of their creatures, and then later on it still has a lasting effect with Overwhelm. So it'll come in handy. That being said, you obviously it leaves you open to being affected by fast spells and things like that. And like I said, it's not easily splashable because of the triple Primal, but the fact that it's 1 and you're going to play it later in the game, I think it's fine. Next up, we have Storm Taper Operative. This is a 2/3 unseen for 2 and a Primal. All right, so fine body, slightly upside. Typically, you want 2/2 for 2, so the 2/3 is an upside for sure. It's not uncommon in this game, but it is cool. It has some text on it. It says, all spells deal -1 damage. Mind you, this is symmetrical, so it also hits you as well. So you really, I don't think the text box is that great. I really don't. Reason being is there's only a couple of factions that actually deal damage with their spells, primarily Primal, which is the color you're currently in, and Fire. So if your opponent is playing, for example, Argenport, then this card does nothing to them, but does still affect you. So it really has a little bit more of a downside to you, guaranteed, because you're going to be the one with Lightning Strike and things like that. So I gave Storm Operative a 2. I think just the fact that it's always going to affect you, but not necessarily your opponent. And even when it does affect your opponent, it's not that big of a deal. They can just easily play around it. Yeah, it's not that great. I gave it a 2. Moving on, we have Shapeshifter's Mask. This one's an interesting one. It's a +1/+1 weapon. So it triggers around, you place on one of your units. 3 power, 1 primal. At the end of your turn, transform the Wielder into a random unit that costs 1 more. So I haven't had a chance to play with this card. This card seems interesting to me. I would see it playing on a unit that is kind of like outlived its usefulness. You have that 1/4 or maybe a 2/2. It's just kind of sitting there, not doing anything. The board has escalated to where it's irrelevant. You could slap this on there, make it a little bit bigger, and every turn you kind of roll the dice to see if you get a better card. That being said, once you do get a better unit, you're only getting it for that one turn, and then essentially it'll turn into something else. So I'm not really sure. I think in a stalled board state, this has the potential of just sitting there and kind of keep upgrading till you get a unit that'll break the board stall. That being said, Primal does have a copy of one of your units, so you can potentially wait with that in hand so you get a really solid unit and then copy that one, and at least that copy will stay around. But I don't know yet, so I gave it a 3. I think it's fine. It will, like I said, upgrade units and could potentially break a board straight, but you won't hold on to that unit very long, so we'll see how it plays out. I'll have to try it one of these days on stream or something to get a good opinion on it. Next up, we have Skycrag Scalebreaker. This is a 3/3 Explorer for 3 double primal. It has Fate, create and draw Skycrag Goad with flying, which is a +0/+2 with flying equipment or weapon. So you place it on a unit. And it has a Renown +2 attack to itself. So baseline, it's a 3/3 for 3, which is just fine. I think that's a fine card filler. I have 0 issues with it. I think it's solid. If you drew it, which you pretty much almost always are, you're going to get the equipment or weapon that allows you to target itself to Renown and give it a +2/+2 in flying. But so you're essentially getting a 5/5 flyer. Let me double check real quick how much goat is. Goat is 4. So a 5/5 flyer for 7 in installments is not bad. It's not bad. It could be a little bit better, but it's actually pretty good. So I like this card. I think because of the fact that at the very least it's just 3/3 for 3. You have the potential to also give flying to one of your bigger creatures if you draw it late. You don't necessarily have to put it back on this. If you have, for example, a dinosaur sitting around the 5/6 overwhelm, you can slap the goat on it, give it flying, and get in there. So I do like Skycrag Scalebreaker. I'm going to give it a 3. I think it's a solid unit all around. You're not disappointed to have this in your deck at all. Next up, you have Rejection. Rejection is a fast spell, 4 power, double primal. It says negate an enemy spell. The enemy player discards all copies from their hand and deck. Rejection can't be negated. We have plenty of negate spells in already at the common and uncommon level that are cheaper and do this because, once again, the remove all copies from a player's hand and deck really doesn't come into play all that often in limited. So yeah, I'm not too high on it. I gave it a 1. I think you can find better. Don't bother putting it in your deck. Moving along, we have Shadowlands Border Scout. This is a 1/2 Elf Serpent for 4. So highly undercosted stats. So it means we'll probably get some upside in the stats. Let's find out. So once again, 4 double primal. It has flying and pledge. Okay, a little bit of evasion. And then it says when Shadowlands Border Scout hits the enemy player, draw a card for each damage dealt. This card is fantastic, and I'll tell you why. If you are able to pump it just one time, you got your money's worth out of this. The baseline for it gets in there for 1, you draw a card. You get in there a couple times, you already replaced it with multiple cards. If you have 1 equipment on it or get a pump spell, like for example, if you're Huru, or you can get 1 pump spell on it to get in like 4 damage and you draw 4 cards, like you're just all over it. Like you're so ahead on the board now, or by card draw, that I think the advantage is huge, and your opponent's hard pressed to catch up, especially when you can keep getting in there. You slap unblockable on it or something like that. I think this card is great. That being said, I am going to warn you, it is vulnerable as a 1/2. It is very vulnerable to a lot of removal, so you typically want to have some kind of protection or something for it. But if your opponent taps out, they have no open power, and they have no flyers. You can just get in and start steamrolling. And like I said, it fuels itself. More cards you draw, more chances you have to pump it and draw even more cards. This card is great. It is vulnerable, but the fact that it can just run away with a game, I feel is worth giving it a 5. This card is very good. I've played it and I've played against it, and it's just, if you get a couple hits in with it and start drawing cards, it just feels like it really does. You just lose, like the game just pulls further and further away from you. So Shadowlands Border Scout gets a 5. Next up, we have a Brilliant Idea. This is a slow spell, 6 power, double primal, and it says draw 2 cards. That's it. 6 power, draw 2 cards. Not too thrilled about this. We see this a lot for for 3 power. We have Wisdom, and we get also at fast speed, and we also get Time has the gain life and draw 2 cards at 5. So what's the deal here? You have Amplify 2, draw an additional 2 cards. So if you play this for 8, now you're drawing 4 cards, and I think that's where the payoff is on this. I'm not too thrilled playing it for 6. Like, I mean, if you have to, you have to. It is what it is. But I feel like I'm really going to wait to the later game so I can play it for 8 and draw 4 cards. Now you're really getting your money's worth and pulling ahead on card advantage. So I gave Brilliant Idea a 3. I mean, shoot, and there's also the potential that you play it for 10 and draw 6 cards. Jeez, and then you're really, like, I don't see you losing the game after that. So yeah, Brilliant Idea gets a 3 because I think the bottom end is just okay. If that, you're probably paying more, but it'll be there when you need it. But when you draw 4 cards, you really feel like you're getting there. Next up, we have our final blue or primal card, which is Shalook Captain. And it is once again the cycle, 5/5 for 6 power, double justice. It is a shaman, which I don't think comes into play right now. +1/+1 to all your primal units, which is relevant with all your flyers. And then it has flying itself. So a 5/5 flyer for 6, baseline, great. It's awesome. I think it's good. Once again, actively pulls you in the colors because you want the anthem effect. I gave Shalook Captain a 4. All right, so that does it for primal. We're here in the home stretch. We got Justice and our multicolor cards. So we're going to go, or Shadow, for correction. Go into Shadow. Shadow, we start off with Wary Spitling. All right, or Spitling, I apologize. Let me fix this on my notes real quick. I forgot the T somehow. All right, cool. And Spitling is a 1/1 Wisp for 1 in a Shadow. And Entomb, +2/+2 and flying. Yeah, I don't like this card. A 1/1 for 1 baseline is just not impressive at all. It has the Entomb where it does become a 3/3 flyer, but now you have to talk about some kind of shenanigans, like Void shenanigans to get it back. It will have some synergies in Wisp decks, and Shadow does have ways of getting things back from the Void, but I just don't think the payoff is really that high there. I mean, you chump block, then you spend a card to get it back, and it's just a 3/3 flyer, which could still be handled. That being said, it triggers Entomb every time. So even though double flying is not a thing, it will go from a 3/3 to a 5/5. So I gave Wary Spitling a 2. You'll play it in some decks, but you're not excited to. Next up is Mournful Deathcap. I feel like this is a build-around card, like most of the Sporefolk. So it is a 0/4 Sporefolk for 2 double shadow, and has Empower. The enemy player discards the top 3 cards of their deck. So here's the alternate win con for you mill people out there that likes to have the opponent lose by drawing out their entire deck. So a 0/4 body I think is fine, but the fact that it's a 0 means your opponent can just keep attacking into it and not really worry about anything. So you're trying to mill out their deck, meanwhile they are just smashing your life total. So you're trying to take out 45 cards when they're trying to take out 25 life. I'm not really sure if milling 3 at a time is okay or not. I guess if you're in Xenon and you have the ability to pump out more sigils, it can make a difference. But yeah, I just don't see it being a thing. So yeah, I gave Mournful Deathcap a 2. Like, some people play it with the build around, like I want an alternate win con, and etc. etc. It's okay in a stalled board state, but I'm not impressed by it. Next up, we have Rista Acantha's Herald. I hope that's the right name. Rista Acantha's Herald. She is a 2/3 elf warrior for 3 double shadow. Rista can't block, which is a thing. That's important to note. Summon, draw a shadow sigil from your deck. So it guarantees you'll hit your 4th power drop, so that's somewhat important. I like things that kind of make sure you hit your sigils, especially early in the game. And in power, so anytime you play a sigil, she will get a +2 attack and Warcry this turn. So 4/3 with Warcry. I think it's okay. We actually, I believe, Stone Scar has this at uncommon without the Empower effect. It's literally just a 4/3 Warcry for 4. So you're paying one more, which means that I'm not too excited about Rista. The fact that she can't block is another issue I have. So, yeah, I think it's okay. Like, I'm giving her a little bit of credit for the fact that it will get you a sigil. But it's a rare with not really any synergies, except if you have that relic that gives her a +2 to attack. So, and like I said, at the uncommon level, we have a card that's kind of this with less work. You just have to be in 2 factions. So, I gave Rista a 3 just because it is relevant. It's fine. It's okay body, but the not blocking thing is an issue as well. So you're going to want to keep turning her sideways. And sometimes the non-blocking, like I beat someone with Rishka just because they couldn't block. I was like, all right, cool. That's one less blocker I have to worry about. So yeah, I gave her a 3. I think I won't hate you for playing it in the deck, but I don't think she's amazing either. Next up, we have Elder Astrologer. This is a 4/4 Elf Mage for 5 double shadow. This card is great because it has flying. So you are essentially paying 1 power to give a big unit flying. I think it's great. That off the bat is great. It also has a summon ability. Give one of your other units a +1 and lifesteal this turn for each of your units. This is a huge stalled board state breaker, or great in a race, because if you play this on curve, let's say you went 2, 3, 4, and then this, you're going to give one of your units a +4, or each of your, so it counts itself, for a +4, +0, and lifesteal. That's a huge swing. It's going to typically either trade up, or if it's an unblockable or flying unit, you get in there, do a big chunk life swing of like 4 or 5 points, which becomes 8 or 10 point swing because you're also gaining life, and it leaves back a great big body in the air. I think it's great. I think it does some work on stalled board states. It kind of can help you get back if you're behind because of the lifesteal on another unit. That being said, there is the potential where you have a unit, a 1/1 or a 2/2 in play that can't attack. So you play it as just a 4/4 flyer for 5, which I still think is fine. So I gave Elder Astrologer a 4. Yeah, I think it's just all around great body. And it's fine. At baseline is great. Ceiling is good. So yeah. Next up, we have Pillar of Dreams. It is a relic. 5 power, double shadow. And when a unit goes to your void, your other units get +1/+1. Yeah, I feel like you only want this in a build around go wide strategy deck. I.e., you play a bunch of rats and a bunch of like units that give you like multiple like grenadins and things like that. So you're sending in a bunch of 1/1s, and every time they chump, they kill one of your 1/1s. All your guys become 2/1s and 3/1s and 4/1s, but you're still losing units to do that. It's a weird card. I'm not very high on it. I give Pillar of Dreams 2. I think there might be a chance that I lose to it one day, but and then what if you only have 3 guys on board? So you lose one, your other 2 guys just get +1/+1. You gain, or +1/+0. You gained 2 power for losing a unit. I don't think that's great. So yeah, I gave Pillar of Dreams a 2 just because I could see there be a deck out there that wants it, but I'm really close to giving it a 1. Next up, we have our Captain for Shadow, which is Auric Captain. This is a 5/5 Minotaur for 6 double shadow. +1/+1 to all your shadow units, which could be relevant since shadow is a go wide strategy or faction, and flyers and unblockable, and it has lifesteal. So lifesteal on a big unit is great. It's awesome. It really makes it swinging where your opponent wants you leave it back on blockers. It can block most of their units. It gains you life. It's great. I like it quite a bit. I feel like it does some work. I'm not gonna get too in depth into it because obviously we've covered it with the other captains. But yeah, and then if you attack with it, like you're just gaining potentially 5, 6, 7 life a turn if you use a trick on it or put equipment or weapon. So yeah, Auric Captain is great. I give it a 4. Next up, we have Bloodlust. It is a slow spell, 6 power, double shadow. You get to steal a unit and ready. You get to steal and ready an enemy unit, which much like Madness. So why are we paying so much for it? It goes berserk. So, this card is typically the last spell you want to play before you win the game. I.e., you want to use it to take out one of their blockers and get in for a bunch of damage and win and kill them. But the fact that you give a unit Berserk actually makes this to where I've seen this card be played a little bit sooner and really kind of swing the game around, because you take their 4/4 or something like that, you give it Berserk, you get in there, either they have to kill it or you get in there for 8, and now they have to attack with it so you can block. Like, it does some more work than it seems on the surface. That being said, though, I don't think it is absolutely amazing either. It could essentially be a dead card as well. So I gave Bloodlust a 3. I mean, it's going to win some games. It's going to really affect some board states, especially in development. But I don't think it's incredible. It's easy to kind of like foil, if you have a big blocker or if there's just no good unit to take. So yeah, I gave Bloodlust a 3. And our final card for Shadow is going to be Akantha the Huntress. So she is a 7/7 elf dragon, and for 9. Whoa, 9. That's a price for sure. Double Shadow. It has Pledge, which I mean is nice on a huge 9 power. So if you have an open hand, it's gonna be a while before you play it. You might as well pledge it. It has Flying, so 7/7 flyer is good, but it has a summon ability. Kill an enemy unit. Period. Done. Cut ties, clean and simple. So that's where the high price tag or power tag comes from it. I am not gonna lie to you. I gave Akantha a 5, and I say this because all 3 sides of this card are great. If you have it in your opening hand, you know for a fact you're not gonna play it nowhere near soon, so you can pledge it. So there's some insurance on having a 9-drop in your deck. That being said, you draw it late game, and you have to play your extra sigils to get to 9. It will kill your opponent's best unit, plain and simple, when you play it. Done. And then it leaves behind a 7/7 flyer. That is huge. Like, very few cards in this game can deal with a 7/7 in the air. They're going to have minimal flyers to be able to double or triple block it enough to kill it. It can block everything in the air, even some things on the ground. I think Akantha is great. It'll help you when you're behind, because you can kill their best unit, and now you have a flyer. It is a month's answered unit that, if unanswered, you'll win the game with it. So yeah, I gave Akantha a 5 because, I mean, it's removal, solid removal. And yeah, if you add everything together, it's undercosted. But obviously, of note, 9 power is a lot. So yeah, that does it for our colors. All 5 factions. Not bad. Some good cards, some bad cards, but that's what's expected with rares. So we'll go into our multi-faction cards now. Starting us off with Rakano, we have Highland Sharpshooter. This is a 3/2 gunslinger for 2, 1 fire, 1 justice, and it has a renown. When Highland Sharpshooter attacks this turn, give the top unit of your deck her battle skills and attack and health equal to hers. So it's like an upgraded Warcry. Instead of just giving them a +1 or +2, it gives them everything. So you put, of note, it is when it attacks. So I believe you have to do it prior to attacking. You can't do it in the middle of combat. So you can't save a combat trick to see if they block and then do it. You would have to do the combat trick first at slow speed and then attack. And also of note, it has to attack that turn. So if you put something on it on your opponent's turn to kind of win combat or save Sharpshooter, it will trigger the renown, but because you didn't attack, it won't trigger the buff. And then next turn, if you should attack with it, it won't trigger the buff because renown already happened. That being said, it's great. You slap something that gives this thing flying or overwhelm or deadly or unblockable. So then let's say +2/+2 and flying on this, and it triggers the renown. You attack. The next unit in your deck is going to get a +5/+4 and flying, which is just huge. So this card has the potential, especially in these colors, to doing some great work. And baseline, a 3/2 for 2 is fine. You're ahead of the curve on that. And an aggressive deck, you have some combat tricks, you'll do fine. That being said, though, it does require 2 cards to make it better. And, you can't quite judge, like, oh, you can't give every unit Warcry and charge and flying every time. So you can't, because you can't control that and it has some high variance, I gave Highland Sharpshooter a 3. Next up, we have a new line of merchants that this cycle goes into the black market, which is 5 cards outside your deck that only have 1 copy. Like, there's no other cards. Typically, you saw and constructed a lot of people putting 3 in their main deck and then 1 in the market. Black Market negates that, where it can only be 5 cards that are unique to your entire combination, both deck and market, which in limited I think is pretty easy to accomplish since you're not going to have multiples of too many cards. So this one is Red Canyon Smuggler, which is a 2/3 merchant, 3 power, Justice Fire, or Rakano, and has double damage, which is great. In these colors, you're going to put stuff on it. So you can easily see this guy doing 6, 7, 12 damage, depending on what kind of weapon or combat trick you place on it. Of note, it doesn't have Overwhelm, so keep that in mind. And like I said, summon, you may choose a card from your hand to swap with a Fire or Justice card in your Black Market. So yeah, like I said, all the merchants are going to do it based on their respective colors. These new lines of smugglers use the Black Market, like I just said, because they are dual faction versus the original line were single faction. So yeah, I think it's good. I gave Red Canyon Smuggler a 4, mainly because giving you access to 5 extra cards is relevant, especially the more niche cards that you wouldn't want to put in your main deck. But the double damage really is going to come into play a lot. Trading up for units or potentially killing your opponent out of nowhere. So yeah, I like it. I gave it a 4. And it's 2 colors. Next up, we have Eaton, Seditious Noble. He is a 4/4 Rebel Mage for 4. Double Fire, double Justice. So a little bit harsh on the influence requirements. It has Pledge, so it is power or influence fixing if you have it in your opening hand. And it says when one of your units becomes a renowned, create and draw a 3/3 Crown Watch Deserter with Warcry. Yeah, I mean, it's in the factions where it has renown triggers and things like that, but like I'm really not weighing too high on it. You are getting a card back, but it's like if you're gonna, you have to have a renown. Mind you, it does not have renown itself, so you have to have another renown unit. You have to have a way to trigger it, and then you're just gonna get a 3/3 with Warcry, which is not insignificant. It is something, but it's also not enough of a payoff for me to be like, yes, boys, we got there, woohoo! So I haven't been impressed with it. It is a 4/4 for 4, which is fine. But I don't think Eaton is that spectacular. And like I said, if you don't have enough renown and targets in your deck, it's just not going to see the payoff enough. So I gave Eaton a 3. Next up, moving into Skycrag, we have Howling Peak Smuggler, which is the color for, or the smuggler or merchant for Fire and Primal. It is a 2/2 merchant for 3. Once again, Fire Primal, and its special ability is plus your spells deal 1 extra damage. So, not very high on this card. I gave all the merchants are going to get a 3 for me because of the fact that it gives you access to more cards, but a 2/2 for 3 is already over costed stats, and I mean it is in the factions that the +1 damage to spells are relevant. So I think it will have an upside, but it's not like you feel like you got there. At best, it might help maybe 2-3 cards if you get like a Lightning Strike and a Torch, or maybe if you get lucky, you get Burn Them All or something like that. So yeah, I think it's fine. I gave Howling Peak Smuggler a 3. Next up, we have Chunk Chunk. Chunk Chunk is a 4/3 Yeti for 4 power, double fire, double primal. It has Pledge, so much like I feel like there's a Psycho if you guys pick up these up. And like we just talked about Eden. And this was a summon, stun, an enemy unit. All right, cool. I can roll with that. It's in the aggressive colors of Skycrag. 4/3 body for 4 is fine. It's about par. And the fact that it stuns one of their units, potentially either a big attacker or a big blocker, is great. So I think it's fine. It has Renowned, play a Snow Fort, which is a relic that gives all your units a +1 health, which is not bad. It could potentially help things, and the fact that Chunk Chunk is a big enough body where you want to put a combat trick on him, I think he's pretty solid. I think he's all around good, not great. His abilities are relevant, so I gave Chunk Chunk a 3. Once again, the double fire, double primal means in 2 color, you're most likely to get him on turn 4, but there is the potential for him not to come down turn 4 because of the harsh influence requirements. Next up, we have Burn Them All. This card is fantastic. It is a fast spell, 5 power, double fire, single primal, and it just deals 5 damage to any enemy. So it covers sites, covers units, covers players, and then it has Amplify 3 Deal 5 damage to an additional enemy. So it can't target the same unit twice. You can't do 10 damage to opponent's face. So if you cast it for 8, it's 10 damage. If you cast it for 11, it is 15 damage. This and at fast speed. This card is great. I actually gave it a 5 because it is going to be able to remove most things in play. I feel like every once in a while you get some beefy creature that won't, but the fact that you can also go to the face if you need to help end the game, and it is fast speed, and you can hit multiple targets with it, so it fits just about anywhere on your curve. Burn them all is awesome. I think this card is great. So yeah, I gave it a 5. That does it for Skycrag. We're going to move into Elysian. This is the Smuggler is Great Valley Smuggler, which is the Merchant. Once again, 3/3 Merchant for 3 Primal Time. And its special ability is a +1/+1 while you have a relic. So it is in time is a very relic centric faction, and it does have it makes it a 4/4/3. Not bad. It might come into play. And then once again, you can go into your black market to swap out any primal or time card for it. Yeah, I gave it a 3. I think it's about the same as the other smugglers, where it's the extra cards is going to be relevant, especially when you have more niche cards that gives you access to without kind of diluting your main deck. But it being a 3/3 for 3 is once again just fine, and potentially being a 4/4 is great. It could kind of swing tempo a little bit, it might not. So I gave it a 3. Next up, you have Bizarre Stampede. This is a slow spell, 5 power, double time, single primal, and your units got +1/+1 for each relic you have with different names. So yeah, I went ahead and just gave this guy a 2. Reason being is you have a Pack Hunt, which is very similar to this, and it doesn't require any prerequisites from you. You just play it, and all your units get +2/+2, which I feel is like what the majority of time what this thing is going to do. It is a slow spell, so your opponent sees it coming. You know, in some cases, you might be able to have 3 relics up there and give all your guys a +3/+3, but yeah, it just seems like too much setup cost. So I gave it a 2. I think the fact that at common you have a better, or I believe uncommon, maybe Pack has uncommon. Either way, you have access to a very similar card that I'd rather just, that's easier to set up as well. It's not 2 factions. So yeah. All right, moving right along. Next up, our last card, we have our Colossal Pteriax. Right? Pteriax. Yeah, because the P is silent. Pteriax, it is a 4/4 dinosaur, 5 double time and double primal. It has flying and pledge, so once again part of that cycle, and pay 3 to give Colossal Pteriax a +1/+1 permanently. Yeah, I like this card. I like this card a lot. Much like that one shadow card we talked about, a 4/4 flyer for 5 is a great rate. You're essentially only paying 1 power for flying, which is awesome. And then it's a power sink. Like anytime you have extra power, you just pump it into this guy and he gets bigger permanently. It's where he gets out of hand. So I think Colossal Pteriax is a 5. And it's the fact that it has a level of evasion and you can just keep making it bigger and bigger and bigger makes it where it's just a must-answer threat. And I mean, you just keep swinging in with it, and it just takes huge chunks of life out of your opponent. That being said, it's not the greatest when you're behind, but I don't know. I just kind of, and the 5 might be a loose. It might be closer to a 4.5, and actually I'll give it there because, like I said, if you're behind, it's not going to quite get there because it doesn't really affect the board that much. So I'll give one of my few rare half ratings, but I do like it. I think it's great. I think the fact that you could just, any extra power you have, pump into this thing will make a world of difference. All right, that does it for Elysian. Next up is Xenon, and we're going to go to Ebon Dune Smuggler, which is the Merchant. It's a 2/2 Merchant, 3 power, 1 time, 1 shadow, which means you could swap any card in your hand for a time or shadow card in your black market, and its extra ability is Ambush. Meh. Not thrilled about it. Ambush on a 2/2 is not that exciting. That being said, you can play it at the end of your opponent's turn to access your market with the most information possible. So it does have something there, but it's not enough to kind of move it into the 4 range. So I gave it a 3. Still a great card. Still gives you access to 5 extra cards. I like it. Next up, we have Dread. It is a 4/1 Nightmare. 4 power, double time, double shadow. It has charge, lifesteal, and pledge. And at the end of the turn, sacrifice Dread, then draw another unit from your void. Of note, it must survive combat. It's at the end of your turn. So if you attack with it and they block it and it dies, which it being 1 health, they can block it with anything and it will die. It will not get the return a unit from your void trigger. That being said, also of note, it draws it, so it puts it back in your hand. It does not play it. It does have charge, so you can kind of pseudo wait for an open board and get in there. The lifesteal is decent. I mean, 4 is not nothing to shake at, and you do get a good unit back. That being said, sometimes you're not going to want a unit back and just want them to block to trade off. If you do, then you get some upside. I think it's fine, but it just has a little too much setup cost, and then if you really want to get the unit back from your void, you're going to just pay for it to play this, and then hopefully they don't have a fast spell to kill it, not attack with it, wait, and then at the end of your turn, you get your unit back in your hand, which seems a little slow too. So yeah, I'm not too high on it. It will do some work, and it has the potential of kind of getting your 4 damage, gaining 4 life, and drawing you a really good unit. So I gave Dread a 3. I'm just not thrilled on it. I might even lean it a little more towards the 2 category, just because there's, Dark Return essentially does something similar for a cheaper cost, and it just being 1 means that you can play the unit the same. Play it, you get the card back and play it right away with an upgraded stat. So I feel, I don't know. Actually, I'm going to put a 2 on Dread. I could be wrong about this, but I just feel like it could potentially be, there's just a better cards, Same thing with, there's that one uncommon, I believe, that it's for 5, but it just puts the unit back into play, period. So you're not taking a whole turn off to do it. So yeah. Next up, we have Blistering Claws. I already went over this in the pack, but I'm going to pick one real quick. So once again, it's just too much setup cost for enough payoff. And you're even with the 4 toughness or 4 armor, you're really only going to kill one thing with it if you're using the deadly. If not, you could just pick off a bunch of small units. So I gave Blistering Claws a 2. Next up, so that does it for Xenon. We're going to go into Argentport here. This is going to be our last faction. We have Back for More. It is a fast spell, 3 power, double justice, 1 shadow, and it says play a unit from your void that died this turn. It gains Aegis. So hey, there's already a reoccurring effect that seems a little more efficient to me than Dread. That being said, it does have to die this turn. So either you have some kind of sack outlet to control when it dies, or you just know it's something your opponent is going to try to kill in combat with double and triple blocks. So you get in there, you leave this up. Now, if there is the game where it's late game, you have plenty of power, you're not making all your power plays every turn, so you can leave this up for turns and turns. If they ever kill your bomb, you can get it back right away. So that is the thing. I think this card has potential. The fact that it also has gives it Aegis means that it could potentially be 3 for 1 because they killed it the first time. Who knows how many cards they took to kill it, so that's 1. Then you bring it back with Aegis, so I have to use a card to spend Aegis on to break the Aegis and then kill it again. So there's some definite high side to this. That being said, you could easily not have the 3 power open, and when they kill your best unit, so it doesn't do it, and then it just sits in your hand dead. You do have to have units worth bringing back for it to be good. So I think the fact that it has a high payoff, but also a very, very low floor means that it's just kind of medium. And I gave Back for More a 3. Next up, we have Hidden Road Smuggler. This is the Argentport Smuggler Merchant once again. 3/3 Merchant for 3, 1 Justice, 1 Shadow. And it has Lifesteal. I think a 3/3 Lifesteal is great. It really helps you kind of take off some of the sting from more aggressive aggro decks. If you can slap some kind of weapon or something on this guy, then Lifesteal becomes even more relevant, and it's legit. It also gets some niche cards. So I think it's great. I gave it a 4. It's just enough above average where I was willing to give it a little more leeway. Because 3/3 is this really solid body, and then the Lifesteal does make it relevant. Less against more controlling decks, but more definitely against more aggressive decks. And then you just have the ability to get rid of one of the cards that might be useless both late game and early game for something in your market. I like Hidden Road Smuggler, gave it a 4. Next up, we have Howling Kurtar. Anyway, it is a 3/3 Dire Beast. 4 power, double shadow, double double Argent Port. Yeah, double Argent Port. So double Shadow, double Justice. It is Deadly, Endurance, and Pledge. So plenty of keywords here. It also has Empower, +2/+2 and flying this turn. So it becomes a 5/5 flyer whenever you have a power play. I like this card, and I'll tell you why. I like the fact that it has endurance and deadly. So you can attack with it. They're typically not going to block unless they have some kind of profitable block because it has deadly. And then it has endurance that comes right back to you where you can leave it on defense to block. The 3/3 body means it's just not going to trade with absolutely everything. So you could still block 1/1s, 2/1s, 2/2s, and stuff with this safely and not worry about using up like, your Scorpion. That's a 1/1 deadly, so it kills anything, but it also dies to anything. So it can definitely trade up. And it has the pledge factor, so it gives you that influence fixing early on. And then the Empower makes a 5/5 flyer, so it could get in there for 5, and then the endurance still has it unexhausted and ready to block on your turn. So you're really capitalizing on the Empower trigger here, versus sometimes with other units you'll hit the Empower but realize you don't have a good attack or you don't want to attack, and you just it wastes it. So this card is great. I like it. I like its versatility. Kind of fits in a lot of scenarios. So I gave Howling Kurtar a 4. I think it's really good. I really do. And the last card or cycle for the rare set are going to be the cargoes. We have Geneve, Ixton, Winchest, Carandon, and Aurelian. These are all they're all the 3 color cities or 3 faction cities. I won't go into too much detail what each one is. You guys can look them up on your own. But long story short, they kind of act like a Seek Power, but only for the 3 factions within that city. So, i.e., for example, Winchest, you can get Fire, Justice, and Shadow. The additional part to this, the reason why they are rare, is because once you have 2 influence of each 3 of the 3 factions, i.e., for example, Geneve, when you have 2 Fire, 2 Time, and 2 Justice, or 2 Primal, correction, they will transmute into a random card, one of each faction. So what this means is it turns into the Contraband, is the correct name. It'll switch from the Geneve Cargo to Geneve Contraband, and then when you play it, it's still 1 power to play, but then it'll give you a choice of one of 3 cards, one from each faction. So it'll give you 1 Fire, 1 Time, and 1 Primal card. Random, completely, entirely random. You can get a Legendary, you can get a card that's way too expensive, you can get a card too cheap. It's completely random. And you get to pick one of those cards, and then it goes in your hand, you draw it. So I think these cards are solid. I think they're good. If you have 2 of the 3 factions, then they're just a Seek Power, which I'm not very high on. That being said, if you have all 3 factions, then the fact that it'll potentially be influence and power fixing early on, and later on you have the potential of getting a card. Granted, I didn't value that extra card too highly because of the fact that it is random. So I think they're solid. It's tough that they're rare. You're taking up a rare slot for it. But if you are in those 3 factions, I think it really has the ability to be a solid card. So I actually gave the cargoes, all 5 of them, a 2.5. Reason being is, once again, you'll play them if you're only in 2 of the factions because it still helps you get a power, triggers spell matter cards, and can fix your influence. But you're really not seeing much of a payoff, especially since Seek Power is common. Unless you have all 3 factions. So it's really tough to evaluate them. I don't really think you're taking them very highly in the first pack, and you probably will in the 4th pack when you know what colors you definitely are. So yeah, that is it for the rare set review. Maybe next time I'll do the legendaries together. I'm not sure yet. I try to keep these kind of sweet and short to the point because they're already going to be long. Once again, this is all for limited play. I do play constructed, but this podcast, when we talk technical stuff, is primarily going to focus on limited. I really appreciate you guys tuning in and listening. I hope this really helps you kind of card evaluate a little bit better, ups your win percentages in limited. And maybe on the next episode, I will be reviewing the legendaries as well as giving you some first impressions on this draft format. All right. So social media, you can catch me at Twitter, Patreon, and YouTube at EJthePodcast. Okay, so look that up on either of those platforms, and you'll find me. And I'll post when I'm Twitch streaming and posting new episodes, etc., etc. You can watch my live stream on Twitch as Jedi_EJ, And if you have any comments, gripes, complaints, or suggestions for the show, you can contact me at EJthePodcast@gmail.com. Once again, wanted to take a moment as well to thank Limited Resources. They are the MTG version of this podcast that we are modeling ourselves after. Thanks. If you do play MTG Limited, definitely check them out. That's Magic the Gathering. And yeah, thanks again, and see you guys next time.